Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. The heart sells for around $1 million on the black market. Crime investigators, what's the creepiest unsolved case you investigated that scares you to this day? Back in the early 80s, a 16-year-old boy was walking home from a party about a mile from his house, when he was intentionally hit by a vehicle, and dragged by the vehicle before being dumped in front of his house for his father to find his body in the morning. The police say they have suspects but not enough evidence to make any arrests. There are still posters all over the town and surrounding areas with his picture asking for information more than 35 years later. Really a tragic story that needs closure. Someone was picking up drunk homeless people in my town, about 20 years back, beating them up and dropping them far from town during the winter season, which can last for about 2 to 8 months, and drop as low as -45 Celsius. A few extra details: it was during the mid-1990s, in the Terrace/PG/PR area. Not sure if it was police or not. Those that live in a small town know how talk gets around. I remember nothing coming from it. It could have been police or just town thugs. It was just kinda scary for us teens at the time. At my first apartment, someone was stringing up dogs in the trees behind houses with their throats cut and bled dry. Serial killer behavior, obviously just killing them to kill them. Worked on that case a couple weeks, but after 4 or 5 dogs, it just stopped and my bosses wouldn't let me work on it anymore with all the real crime going on. I still think it was a future serial killer practicing. I work as an investigator for the county medical examiner. The cases that always creep me out are the Jane and John Does, especially the younger ones. How could a family not report a loved one missing for 10, 20 or 30 years? Some of these cases are not suspicious, so it's not like the family is worried about going to prison. We're looking at forensic genealogy to assist with some of the cases. Mystery was solved a few days after it happened, but I figured I would share anyways. In the town I live in, there's a rundown motel that all the druggies stay at. Well, anyways, there was a night that a man walked into and pulled out a sawed-off shotgun and blew the cashier's brains all over the wall. Stole $112 and some change. Obviously an investigation was opened, and for 4 days they didn't have any leads or anything. Turns out on the evening of the 4th night they supposedly found the murderer behind the motel in a cornfield in a fetal position, just rocking back and forth. Another murder happened the same way, but in a gas station in a town about half an hour away. Dude walked in and a kid we went to high school with was the cashier, shot him in the face with a shotgun. If I remember correctly, he stole around $400. It was all over the news for the longest time. A local girl went missing about 2 years ago. Whole community and neighboring communities got involved. Had a hashtag they painted on car windows and everything, tried like crazy to find her. The parents still hold out hope, but I'm not convinced they really do, and it's devastating to watch. I have friends that know the family. I have 2 young girls, and this is a fear that my job forces me to take home with me, that one day they'll disappear and that's it. There are some sex trafficking hotspots nearby. A week after that girl disappeared, I told my wife she was most likely already dead. Worked in forensics 2004 to 2008, mostly rapes, homicides, and cold cases. Never forgot one where a baby was abused because a burglar threatened to kill the entire family if the parent didn't do it. Wasn't solved before I left and nothing came up on Google. Never forgot names. The idea that someone out there free is that messed up, or that someone would make that stuff up, is so disturbing to me. Not an investigator. In League City, Texas. There used to be a dead-end road. The city grew like crazy. In the process of clearing land they found dozens of girls buried. Still several unidentified. They stumbled onto the dumping ground for a serial killer. It's called a road if you're familiar with that area. They did a documentary on it at some point. My sister went to prom with a guy who lived next door to this. One night she is over at his house and a random girl comes running, no shows on, screaming, banging on the door saying some guy picked her up or was following her. Boys say the man was nowhere to be found. Prom date and brother get her to safety, then proceed to tell my sister all the weird ghost stories, because weird things like that always happen around here. They thought she was spooked by feelings of being watched or something. Until a few years later when they started finding bodies. Again. Edit, I reached out to my sister for full details. This is her story. Okay. So it was some girl from Angelton got in a wreck in front of the house by the field. She comes running to the house, no shoes on. This girl tells them some guy was following her. He was trying to run her off the road. Blocked her car, forcing her down this road, called her. The road was dark, she didn't feel right. She saw the lights on in their house. So she wrecked her car as she jumped out and ran to the back door. Boys got her inside, then saw flashlights around their house, which apparently happened often, keep her inside long enough to feel like whoever it was left. Only to realize during all this she had been drugged, that's why she didn't feel right. They called the cops. Man was picking up girls at a bar on NASA Road 1 and drugging them. So they caught at least one creep. Bodies were found there from the 70s till I think 2000s. Fun. The 35-pound bags of human vomit that appeared in the parking lot of the Radnor, Pennsylvania Bed Bath & Beyond. For a few weeks. The woman on Philly walking to the Acme Market, who thought someone ran by and hit her accidentally. She shopped for 30 minutes at Acme, then walked home and her daughter discovered a chef's knife lodged in her neck. No one at Acme said anything and the knife was visible on surveillance. I'm not an investigator, but this happened to a little girl in my brother's class and a friend from school. My friend was a happy-go-lucky, chubby guy that everyone liked. He smoked a little weed from time to time, which made it hard for him to keep a job. One day he goes missing and is found in his barn swinging from a rafter by a friend of his. Suicide note. No ladder or any way for him to have gotten up to the rafter. No typical signs of depression or suicide such as saying goodbye to loved ones, taking care of loose ends, etc. gets written off as a suicide, case temporarily closed. 6-year-old girl was missing from her home in the morning, found in the barn hanging from the rafter and raped/molested with a knife. Stepdad had porn of her on his computer and somehow was cleared on the murder by pinning it on a teenage neighbor. Neighbor kid claims stepdad put him up to it and smoked weed with him, but there was no evidence to convict him. The teenager went to jail for murder while stepdad got a reduced sentence for child porn. Neither got a drug charge, which was also weird. The reason I mention these together? Stepdad was the friend who called in my friend's death. After no luck with the county, I anonymously messaged Channel 5 and they had to reopen after it was reported publicly that they missed something. Forensic analysts said the suicide note was faked. Suddenly the detective on the case finds there was a ladder present, reclosed the case, and retired. Dude got away with murder, twice in one case and once in another. I'd consider both unsolved till the right guy goes down for them. In a town close to me, a few years ago a little boy went missing. He was in a foster home with his siblings. There was apparent previous reports from neighbors of them wandering off frequently because they were left alone without food, breaking into garages I think. He was reported missing by the foster mom. She went on TV and everything. There was so many search parties. We live in the desert, so Therese a lot of open land. I stopped hearing things about it. Eventually I asked one of my buddies who works in that PD and he told me they never got any real answers. They found remains years later that they believed to be his in a canal, but it had been so long, not much was left. Also they think wild animals had probably spread what was left of the remains around after all these years. There's a man who comes into the bar I work at every day around 4 p.m. He's nice, has a group of other guys he socializes with. His wife comes in every Sunday with him for football season. Their daughter went missing a few years ago. They had a suspect, who my older sister actually dated for a short period. When they couldn't definitively connect him to the case, they cut him loose. He's now serving time for a completely separate kidnapping and murder. He hasn't confessed to the first one, so the couple will never really know if they caught the guy. Everyone just assumes. I don't think the family will ever get closure off of an assumption though. My father was a police officer some time ago. While in school his platoon was called with every other policeman in region. A kid was missing. They were looking for him for quite some time, yet they did not find him. He was supposed to be somewhere in small forest near the town he was living in. Kid just sunk. After some time people would contact police and say that kid was seen almost 500 kilometers away, alone. They had many suspects but all got the alibi. The case was open for almost 20 years and was closed 10 years ago. We'll try to find some info about it at post, but here in Poland we do not put such information to public. Not a crime investigator, but Dia Waking went missing about a decade ago and was found in boxes. It is estimated that she was cut up into around 2,000 pieces. When they put her back together they were missing a heart, spleen and liver. My personal theory is black market organ transplants, to sell or to use I don't know, maybe to sell because the heart sells for around $1 million on the black market. Not a crime investigator, but I had a good buddy that went missing in a cornfield when he was a 2-year-old kid, back in 80 or 81. Literally thousands of volunteers came out to help search the fields and land around his farm for 2 days, but he was nowhere to be found. They even brought in a psychic. His parents were so desperate. On the 3rd day he was finally found, quite some distance from where he disappeared. His parents still think to this day that he was abducted, but because of all the media attention and people searching for him, the kidnappers returned him, pretty much just dropping him off and hightailing it out of there. Not me, but my dad told me about this. On the Gold Coast in Australia in the 1990s, there was a Chinese mob. The wife of the leader wanted a new husband and boy toy. The following is all presumed, but she got people in the mob to kill him. She then presumably cut him up with a garden saw. This is based off of neighbors' reports of a chainsaw at 1 a.m. for long periods. It was presumed that she put the body in gym bags and put it next to the bin. A teenager saw the bags and wanted to take them, but he kicked the bags and it was squishy, so he decided not to. When she reported her husband as missing, she was the prime suspect. The police found the bathroom covered in blood using UV light. The body was never found, so it could never be pointed to her. She was convicted on assumptions due to her already affiliation with the mob. She gets released next year from a life sentence. Not a crime investigator, but the older brother of someone I went to high school with disappeared in August of 2017. He had gotten into drugs, went to rehab, and was trying to rebuild his life when he went to Maryland to visit a friend from rehab. When he got there, the friend had made other plans but sent him to hang out with this other woman in her 40s. He was not allowed at the woman's house, so she drove him to a piece of property her uncle owned, left him there to detox without any food, water or shelter, and claimed she would be back soon. She left him there for 3 days, claimed to drop off supplies, but his parents have their doubts about that. When the parents came a week later, he was gone and the woman claimed to not know where he went. A couple months later his body was found over 100 miles away. His death is being investigated and I believe the state is building a murder case against the woman. I will be following when that happens. Very sad story. If anyone wants to Google it, his name was David Gibson Smith. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more creepy videos. Share your own stories about creepy unsolved cases in the comments below. Have a great day or evening, and stay safe.